leadership team of a Boston public pilot school. Now, this is not any school. Convince you to implement UDL? Convince you that it's just too risky at this point. This will be a structured debate. You will hear from each
based on including all students in learning. Many of the opposing points are based on misconceptions of UDL. However, when implemented holistically and thoughtfully, UDL provides great support for both students and teachers. Teachers have the potential to be more accessible for all students. Ultimately, UDL is a flexible framework that can be used in a variety of ways and applied in a variety of classrooms. So it's not for one type of teacher, one type of student. Moreover, our school...
Hello everyone. I'm not going to start off by talking about what the other side opposes, but rather talk about how our pilot school is a place for innovation. And so that being said, we really don't want to take a government mandate, which is that UDL is ultimately cost consuming, is time consuming, and is not a cure-all for every single ill. If you looked at some of the language that the resources we have, in their argument, literacy was only mentioned. So math, science, PE, there are all for innovation, and we will innovate based on existing practices, but we just think that UDL is attempting to do way too much for way too much time and cost.
It doesn't make sense. We need to come up with something that addresses every individual's needs to ensure that they can all learn through adulthood, because we're not giving up on them in this pilot school.
The criteria for having an attentional disability or learning disability that basically sets an arbitrary cutoff, which isn't really reached through objective means, but let's just pretend it is. And in order to have diagnosed with an attentional or learning disability, you have to be like below the 10th percentile in those things. But what if you're in the 15th percentile? You're still struggling with these things, but you don't technically qualify for supports. Or what if you are, below the 10th percentile? I'm just making this number up. But nobody notices. Then what happens? So right now we have a model where having
Bartholomew Consolidated School Corporation, which is a school in Indiana, and they implemented UDL within their curriculum. A lot of times people felt that the curriculum was disabling, but when they implemented UDL, feedback from the parents stated that appropriate peers, they were not segregated and taught separately, which was really helpful in motivating them. And some of the trends that we noticed within the state test, there was an upward trend in passing ELA as well as math for all students. That is general education students, free and reduced lunch price students, English language learners, and special needs students. There was also a 22% increase in the graduation trends of all the students from 59.3% to 81.3%.
There's a lack of representation from this side of the argument in that they are only speaking for this debate, didn't print out any notes, didn't have any other multiple means of representation made for this particular side, which is kind of an oversight, if you ask me. However, there is a magic number. That magic number is 0. And that is the amount of accountable federal dollars that are used to implement UDL in classrooms. 0 is also the amount of the variability in data. That means you cannot say it positively or negatively correlates with outcomes, which as a pilot school, we're trying to thrive and stay alive in a very highly competitive market. And if we can't prove that they're growing because of UDL, our school shuts down, and this community that we've worked so hard to...
And we don't have the funding, and we cannot ask the families to help us with the funding to implement UDL. So the cost-benefit ratio is just not...
On lines of cost effectiveness, also UDL is going to be really human resource intensive, which means that we are going to need someone to train these teachers. who are already overloaded with their current work, which means they'll have to take out extra time to learn this whole new idea of UDL and whole new way of implementing their curriculum. More importantly, just who is going to invest time and money into professionally developing these teachers. Considering that Lorenzo mentioned that there are zero federal amounts, federal dollars basically allocated to this particular intervention, I don't see the feasibility of this particular.
Different means of representation, and thank you for that nod. I'm glad we have a UDL believer. Work together, provide resources to each other. This is important for the diversity of our school, and I would argue that the racial diversity and the racial tensions you mentioned are extremely critical and can be addressed through UDL, which encourages children to figure out how to communicate with each other in a respectful manner.
You know, and everything you just said is back to the point of you are translating the existing goals and objectives that the government is currently asking students to, looking for our students to make, to get better grades in their testing scores and so on. We want them to have more options in their development. We want them to think broadly. We want them to be critical thinkers. We want them to explore things. We don't want them to do the same things that everyone does in public school, but just a little bit more